I understand that all of you are familiarized with a master plan. And I would like to stress this concept of master plan not only in the planning tool, but also in the planning and managerial tool that is a master plan. So a master plan could be a planning and managerial tool, very flexible to adapt to the circumstances, and upgradable over time, which is very important when we are talking about cultural preservation heritage. What are the components of a master plan? I'm going to be very quickly there because there is another intervenant which has already talked about that. But when we try to identify the need of a master plan, we need to talk about what to do in a master plan. This is the definition of the master plan. We need to talk about why a master plan is needed. This should be the justification of a master plan. And also, to what extent bring our master plan. That should be the scope of a master plan. And also we need to talk about which is the cultural significance or the constructive evolution we want to preserve or we want to direct. We are going to do this in a master plan through data gathering, through technical analysis, and through diagnosis, in order to prepare our basic criteria for intervention, the whole program of intervention, and finally, the management strategies for the implementation. At the very end, but not less important, we should have the auxiliary programs in other sectors. About the partners in a master plan, who are the main partners possible in a master plan? Mandatory partners, in my opinion, are all public institutions mandated by government or by laws in cultural heritage preservation, and also another public and private actors, private owners, public owners, and any actors who wanted to intervene or wanting to collaborate in the definition and in the implementation of a master plan. This is very important in a master plan to have the society supporting the master plan. Why a master plan could be useful in a disaster event? As you are going to see, some of the answers are quite similar to the ones provided by the Escuela Taller. A disaster should be an opportunity for implementing preventive measures in all the elements susceptible of cultural heritage preservation. Should be also an opportunity to increase knowledge of the cultural heritage. Also should be an opportunity to unify criteria of intervention, including, when needed, the phasing and budgeting of the different activities of the master plan. Should be important in order to educate and promote citizen participation. Finally, should be important in order to help disseminating and appreciate heritage values by all the citizens. Those two tools combined should give us some strategies, we call these strategies, that in a national level and a local level could be useful for all actors involved in cultural heritage preservation. For example, at the national level, those two tools will support the strengthening capacities to preserve cultural heritage at a national level. But should also help to improve resilience to disaster affecting cultural heritage. And should be also very helpful in the sensibilization of the whole society about cultural heritage. At the local level, a very important strategy should be strengthening provincial disaster risk reduction offices in cultural heritage approach, which today in the Philippines, but also in 90% of the countries, it doesn't exist. And also avoiding immediate risk and further damages to cultural heritage. And trying to strengthen the capacity building at local level to assure local participation on preservation, on cultural preservation. As you can see here in the different phases of a disaster, in the preventive phase, implementing measures to minimize the impact of catastrophic events, Escuela Taller could play an important role, waiting for the master plan to be ready in the next immediate phase. In that immediate phase, in which priority is given on risk to the integrity of cultural heritage assets and people, and later on implementation of action in order to reduce and prevent further damage to the cultural heritage, both Escuela Taller and master plan should be ready to play together a major role in terms of planning, but also in terms of starting the implementation of the first decision. And finally, when the recovery phase starts, Escuela Taller and master plan should keep on working together and trying to develop the strategies we talked about before. Finally, in that slide, I'll give you some examples in order to, for the ones interested in have further information, you can go to the different websites to see how, for example, the master plan and Escuela Taller in Cartagena de Indias in Colombia, master plan in Antigua Guatemala, in Guatemala, master planning in Potosí, Bolivia, master plan of Comayagua with the Escuela Taller in Honduras, in Panama Viejo or in Popayán. There are other many examples. You could see as those three tools are being working together for, in some of the cases, for more than 20 years, and try to to achieve this main objective of preserving the cultural heritage. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gallego. And I'd like to remind everyone that the next speaker will be our last speaker for the morning session. And if you must, please do prepare your questions if you have any questions. So our next speaker is the founding dean of the College of Architecture and Fine Arts in USC, the recipient of Papal Award Croce pro Ecclesiae et Pontifici from Pope Benedict XVI, and the executive committee member of the National Committee on Monuments and Sites of the NCCA. She will be speaking about lessons from disaster. Please help me welcome Professor Melva Rodriguez Hava. A round of applause, please.
Thank you very much, Mickey. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Don't worry, my presentation will not be very long. I just breezed through some of the pictures which you have already shown, but I would like to present also some of the recommendations which we in the academe find very relevant and important in view of the disasters that have hit us. So my presentation is titled Lessons from a Disaster. To have a very quick review of the events that happened here in Cebu, we were hit by an earthquake in Negros in 2012. And then again, the Bohol earthquake also affected us in 2013. And soon after that, Typhoon Yolanda hit the northern part of Cebu, Dalbantayan, Madradejos, and then exited all the way to northern Palawan. So in response to that, the academe, especially the College of Architecture and Fine Arts, through the initiative of Dean Joseph Michael Espina, created teams in order to do rapid assessments of the damage that have been wrought by the earthquake and the typhoon. And so what we did was to organize ourselves into teams in Northwest Cebu, and then we had another group going to Northeast, the Central Cebu team, Southeast, Southwest, and finally some of us even went to our beloved sister province, Bohol. Okay, so let me give you a quick rundown on the findings on the damaged cultural properties in Cebu City. First of all, let me just explain that we have categorized the degrees of damage into level 1, gravest damage, level 2, major parts still standing, level 3, major parts still standing but with severe damages and also restorable, and level 4, most parts are still standing. So for level 3 damage, of course, the Basilica del Santo Niño, the video which was presented by Dean Joseph Michael Espina this morning spoke very clearly of what really happened. And here you see some pictures of the debris, including the big lantern that the structural engineers suspect really caused the eventual shearing off of the top of the dome of the belfry. Of course, in Dalaget, in southern Cebu, which is right across Panglao Island and very near Bohol, the sacristy also suffered complete damage, but as you can see, miraculously, the image of the Blessed Virgin Mary escaped as even minor scratches. In Dalaget, the front facade of the church and also the upper part here and this spire also suffered cracks. But the most serious damage was again also the belfry. In the Cebu Cathedral, we had minor cracks and also the belfry suffered damages, but not very great. In Sambuan, the same thing, the belfry suffered bulging and delamination of stones. In Karkar, as you can see again, the belfry suffered some loosening of stones and actual prying of some stones. Santo Tomas de Villanueva, again, it's the belfry that suffered damage, you see here, but it probably is already relevant at this point to notice that the plant growth, on top of the belfry, we suspect may have caused also, may have added vulnerability to the structure itself. Not only in this church, but we see this happening very often in other coral stone structures as well. And this is in Pardo, in Bohol, Patrocinio de Maria also suffered cracks. And we are here able to share with you the general observations of our findings for the churches in Cebu. Most of the churches that suffered damage were those located in the southeastern part, which was closest to the epicenter in Bohol. The damage suffered by the churches in southwestern Cebu because of the 2012 Negros earthquake worsened after 2013 Bohol earthquake. Of the churches that suffered damage, the belfries and the facades were most affected. Cracks are prevalent in weak points such as window and door openings, and this we can say with emphasis, poor maintenance of the structures such as vegetative growth, ill-advised alterations, and the use of incompatible materials contributed to the vulnerability of the structures. Regarding the non-religious monuments in Cebu, we have here the Fort San Pedro, the Magellan's Kiosk, and as you can see in the picture, in Fort San Pedro, the bastion suffered damage. One has leaned and the other one has really imploded. We still have to address these problems. And we also again notice lack of maintenance. Here we see a loose stone and moss growth on the coral stone walls, which has still to be addressed. The rampart wall here also suffered damage. When I took the picture, this picture and took another one the other day, grass had already grown on the stones that fell, which should already have been retrieved and documented. This is the Magellan's Kiosk, also suffered some cracks, but which is already being shored. Shoring done by the Order of the St. Augustines, who are the ones responsible for managing the kiosk. But of course, since we went to Bohol, let me just give a run through. I'll go very fast. I'll go rapidly through this because this is a rapid assessment. Besides, Father Ted Toralba already presented. So anyway, I'm sharing the findings also of Architect Joy Mananghaya when she and I, together with Architect Regeline Busmante, went the week after this happened, and we were also there with Father Toralba and Director Barnes on that same boat ride. It's very, very exciting boat ride because all the roads were unpassable. Maribohok, of course, you've seen this before and after. That's how it looked, and before, and that's how it looks now. Total damage. Major parts still standing. Lobok, before and after. Level 3 damage. Our Lady of the Assumption, before and after. Luay, before and after. Baclayon, before and after. Oh, by the way, as just a little aside, there is this, the front portico fell, but again there is a statue here of the Blessed Mother that hangs precariously on the beam, and it's still there. It hasn't fallen, at least. It's still there. I mean, it's something to be said about the statues of the Blessed Virgin. They seem to want to stay in place. This is Cortes, Senior Santo Niño. They had already, courtesy of the National Museum, done proper identification and the piling of the loose stones. Inabanga, St. Paul, St. Isidore in Tubigon, Claring, and as far as level 4 is concerned, most parts still standing, Carmen, Agbilaran, St. Isidore. Okay, so we had to do some kind of assessment after all these rapid visits, we did some kind of analysis and charted them into some kind of a matrix. So in the city, you have only Santo Niño. The red is severe, green is moderate, and yellow is minor. If you see a blank spot there, that means no damage. So you see the belfry here, the column under belfry. Santo Niño suffered severely, so that's red. In the southeast of Cebu, we have also Carcar that suffered, and the Laguet belfry that suffered. All the rest are in good condition. In the southwest, you only see greens and yellows. It's not too bad. In the northwest, just greens and yellows, not too bad. In the northeast, not too bad either. But look at Bohol. You have quite a lot of reds there, very severe damage. And we even had to introduce a new color scheme for the total collapse of three churches, Loon, Paribuhog, and Tubig. So just a little summary of the status now of the churches in Cebu. We have here in this column what is supposed to be done, and here the churches. So basically there's nothing yet except the churches which have been initially repaired by the parish themselves. By the way, all the churches in Cebu are under the National Historical Commission of the Philippines, and we were happy to learn from architect Wilkie de Lumen, whom we called yesterday, that the detailed engineering studies have been awarded already, but we still have to see the start of retrieval and recovery operations of the cultural properties damaged in Cebu. Okay, lessons to be learned. First, general observations from our international friends. The study made by the Japan Consortium for International Cooperation in Cultural Heritage, done together with the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, revealed that cultural properties in the Philippines are facing a conservation crisis, and that there is a shortage of human resources and facilities. Most of all, disaster countermeasures were saliently lacking. Agree, Father Tim? And then findings made by the UNESCO expert mission to the Philippines recommends capacity building and training in disaster risk reduction, not only in the national level, but also in towns and barangays. This can start with curriculum design meetings with the national and local experts, followed by provincial and town trainings down to the barangay levels, please, including the youth on participatory methodologies. General recommendations, therefore. Organize a conference in order to define guidelines for post-disaster management work. Prioritize shoring and damage control. Delay may result in eventual collapse of parts that are in precarious state. This is being done in Bohol. I am doing this here, reading this here for the sake of my Cebuano kababayans. At the clearing operations, ensure that the evidence of tangible attributes of historic structures are documented and kept. Prioritize intervention work according to the degree of damage. Follow a participative, inclusive, and collaborative approach in crafting a master plan to ensure longer life for the churches and other cultural properties. And consider modern methods of structural assessments, geotechnical investigations, and structural engineering. I got these suggestions from architect Joy B. Mananghaya and of course from the NCCA. Now for preventive conservation, we need to do very specific tasks. We have to be very clear about the tasks of each and everyone involved in conservation work. The architect must know that he is concerned with evaluation and planning of materials and technology, and that he has to coordinate with the engineering and conservation experts. The structural engineer assesses load-bearing elements of the historic structure. The art historian and conservators are expected to be knowledgeable and experienced in wood and stone conservation, artworks, etc. A team of craftsmen composed of master builders, stone masons, carvers, etc. must have undergone training in restoration work, and the citizens, stakeholders, must participate in the planning. The community assists in raising awareness, initiates training programs and educational modules, and is involved also in fundraising activities. Then we have to emphasize regular maintenance. Many of the areas that suffered damage were those that had severe need of maintenance. Periodic maintenance is highly essential to maintain a building's ability to withstand stresses from daily usage, from tremors and typhoons, and immediate action taken on areas that are discovered to be in need of repair will guarantee the safety and the well-being of the users. It is also the key to longevity of the heritage structure itself. So it is necessary to organize units or teams for the task of maintenance and reconstruction, and in both the technical and financial processes, not only at the national level, but also at the provincial, town, and even in the barangay level. We need these teams really to be organized. Another recommendation is the need for documentation, including those of repairs done. Load-bearing construction may have been weakened by wrong alterations of the structural components, by cyclones and earthquakes, rain and moisture, insects, lack of regular maintenance, overgrown plants with roots that penetrate through the masonry. And then we need also the legal and political framework. We have to establish building regulations and permit processes for cultural properties. We don't have it yet in this city. I don't know what city, maybe Vigan has, but we really need to craft these regulations. And then the owners have to know their responsibility as administrators and custodians of cultural properties. And of course, the community and informal institutions, NGOs, church, and academe must know also their role. Then it would be good to have a basic restoration team composed of architects, engineers, surveyor, art historian, conservators, and craftsmen. And finally, to end my presentation, I would like just to share the main contents of the MOA signed with TIASA, NM, NCCA, and the AHCP. It is regarding the National Reconstruction Program, which is supposed to be implemented in 3 phases within 3 years. Phase 1 involves the pre-restoration activities. Phase 2 is the holding of a series of experts' conferences to determine the appropriate restoration and reconstruction approaches. The outcome shall be a restoration plan for the calamity-affected areas. And phase 3 will be the implementation of the initial phase of the site restoration plans. But also, there is a need to institutionalize the conservation program. And this means that there should be training components in various modalities, from high school, post-secondary, up to even the graduate school. The aim is to produce a body of qualified heritage workers who can be deployed anywhere in the country in time of need and disaster as first responders and in subsequent pre-restoration and restoration efforts. So for this purpose, the NCCA, the NM, and the NHCP shall hold discussions with the Commission on Higher Learning, Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, and the Department of Education, as well as known experts in the field to design these training modules. ASAP. As soon as possible, please. So let me just present in conclusion a scheme, a template which I borrowed with thanks from Professor Richie Miyake. This very beautiful scheme which will show us the program or the matrix of activities. So phase 1, which we call the pre-restoration phase, involves the rapid assessment and the removal of debris, which has been done both in Cebu and in Bohol. Of course, Bohol is way ahead. In many ways, they're always way ahead. They have already done the removal of debris, and the detailed damage assessment has also been done to some extent, but not yet in the form that we would like to really get hold of in terms of, in the sense of detailed engineering studies, because it is from there that we can plan for the restoration and reconstruction concepts. But there has to be an examination and selection of the removed materials of the roofing, the walls, and the openings, which was already done in Bohol, which we still have to do in Cebu. And there has to be the detailed engineering studies, or DES. Eventually, it should include all the historic documentations, church archival materials, GIS mapping, archaeological survey findings, architectural survey, structural survey, and others. Now, once we have the DES, then we can probably move to phase 2 already for the reconstruction and restoration planning. This is the first step. The reconstruction and restoration policy has to be decided together with the stakeholders, presented in a public hearing, including consideration of the legal requirements, because all these will lead finally to a draft restoration plan. A draft restoration plan which we must iterate over and over again before we can have finally the final restoration plan. Architectural, consolidation, landscape, and other plans that may be necessary for the site. Once we have that, we can do the feasibility study and have again the social and community the community organized in order to help, in fundraising, educational drives, and even communication to the rest of the stakeholders on what is happening. So that would be phase 2. All of that will lead to the implementation, which is phase 3. But in the meantime, we cannot wait for phase 2 to happen. We cannot wait for this. This is still to be done. This has just been awarded. It still has to be started. But we already mentioned the need for training. So what we can do is to fast track already. We do not have to wait for that. Trainings can already be done from the provincial, town, city, and barangay levels on the protocol for pre-restoration activities. Because people have to know how to lift the stones, to put it correctly, pile it correctly, document it. I mean, that can be done even by the villagers, but they need to be trained already now. And then eventually for the planning, people will need leveling. Many people do not understand heritage the way experts understand it, or architects understand it, or archaeologists understand it. Some people have a different understanding or level of understanding of what heritage is. In fact, many of them might say, let's do away with the old, bago na lang, let's try to build new, modern. In fact, if we are really to be sensitive about culture, in other cultures, with very good intention, some experts go there and help restore very old religious structures. But in Australia, for example, it was the stakeholders who said, no, please do not preserve it, because it's part of our religion and culture to just allow it to decay so that we can build a new one. You see, so there has to be an understanding and a leveling of what stakeholders think about where they want to go and what the experts think, because sometimes these ideas clash. So there has to be training, consultation, dialogue among the stakeholders and the experts on how to interpret. Will we reconstruct? Will there be anastylosis? Will we rebuild? Will we restore? I mean, these are very difficult decisions to make, and not one person or one expert or one team or one group of persons can decide this. This has to be undertaken in serious dialogues and discussions. So there has to be training regarding interpretation, restoration techniques, budgetary considerations. Already now, if possible, and all the way up to the implementation. So with that, I'd just like to acknowledge again the Japan Consortium for International Cooperation in Cultural Heritage, Professor Juan Ramon Jimenez, Professor Raymond Becker Ritterspachs, a German expert who came and helped us in the evaluation and assessment of the heritage sites. Of course, our very supportive CAFA Dean, the NCCA, the National Museum, our good friend, the Director Jeremy Barnes is here, National Historical Commission of the Philippines. I don't see Madam Maria Serena Diop, no? But anyway, we thank them too United Architects of the Philippines, who helped us in the rapid assessment. Of course, FIBOL's Director Renato Suridom, Architect Joy Mananghaya of the NCCA and CMS, and the faculty, students, and staff of USC Cheris, who has been doing a lot of work, and especially Shane, who has helped me put together this PowerPoint presentation for easier understanding and more effective delivery, I hope. So with that, I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Professor Hava. And may I please request for the speakers to be on stage together with our very own Architect Joy Onozawa and Taihei Fujisawa of the University of Shiga Prefecture. So if you have questions, just please raise them, guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, speakers. Do we have any questions? Please raise your hand and we will bring the mic to you. Anyone?
I would like to ask Professor Fava the last presentation, and my name is Hanazata, and I'm really interested in your presentation, and especially the damage level assessment. And you showed me the damage level 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm wondering those damage levels were the international criteria or national criteria or local criteria. How to evaluate the damage level?
Thank you very much for your question. That was national criteria set up by the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. Did I answer? Thank you very much. It is, yes, the document is available at the NCCA, but it has not yet been published. Yes. But it's available at the NCCA. It's authored by Architect Joy Mananghaya of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts. Thank you, sir.
Any more questions, comments? This is your chance now. It's very difficult to get all of these speakers here to Cebu. So I think we should take this opportunity.
Good morning. I'm not an architect, I'm just a layman, Cebuana. And I noticed that a lot of damage was always in the belfry. So is there a reason for that, and what can we do to prevent?
Yes, Madam Hava?
May I respond to that? Thank you very much. I agree with you that most of the damage is in the belfry. And it's very interesting. I think this is really a good opportunity for students to study and for structural engineers. Because, for example, the belfries that are right beside highways, for example, in Lobok, and then the one in Yes, Baclayon. And here in Cebu, Santo Niño suffered grave damage. But at the same time, the belfry in the tower in Balilihan, which is inside, inland, also collapsed totally. And it's not even beside the highway. So it could have been the soil condition. And then we also want to see if the belfry that is attached to the church is safer than a belfry that is standing alone. Again, we cannot make conclusion because in Santo Niño, for example, the belfry is attached to the main church, but it suffered damage. In Luay, the belfry is separate and it hardly is, it really escaped unscathed. No problem at all. In Luay Church, the facade collapsed, this Escuela de Niño suffered damage, and the belfry that is right in the center suffered no damage at all. So we cannot really make any conclusions yet. Could it be that towers that stand alone survive better than towers that are attached? Could it be that towers that are near highways are more vulnerable? But there's one tower in Dimiao that is right beside the highway but suffered minimal damage. So what I'm trying to say is that there has to be a study and, to determine what the variables are. I mean, putting some variables under control, we'd like to see really how maybe also the materials, the kind of stone used and the kind of mortar mix used could also play a part, aside from, as I said earlier, the soil conditions. But that is only as far as I can say, really, in response to your question, because this really merits deeper study by structural engineers, and maybe even thesis by civil engineering or architecture students. I look forward to also, reading findings of studies regarding this. But that is a very, very good question. Thank you, Madam.
I'd like to respond to that also. So the inherent nature of the belfry being very high is makes it susceptible also to earthquakes, because the higher the structure go, the more it is susceptible to lateral forces. And especially in many of our belfries which have undergone repairs, like for example in the Basilica Belfry, what we heard was that lantern at the top of the dome was repaired after the war and it was filled up with concrete. So it became very heavy, and that was one of the causes of the collapse, because it was top heavy. The mass itself attracted a lot of the lateral forces during earthquakes. And there are a lot of things that's happening in belfries. They add more bells, actually, like in Santo Niño, there were originally probably about four or five, but when we counted after the collapse, there were 7 bells already. The latest one was added in 1930s during the centennial anniversary of the Augustinians. So things like that. And of course, the maintenance, as Professor Hava mentioned earlier, it's not too well because the belfry are very high, difficult to maintain, take out all the vegetation, all that. So all of these things come together to make our belfries very susceptible to collapse during earthquakes.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess to summarize all the presentations today, as what Professor Fujioka said in Japan, it was only in the Great Hanshin earthquake of 1995 that Japan started to also get very conscious and started discussions on heritage. So this is what's happening to us. So before we end the session, each speaker here will be given 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, to say whatever opinion you have of the planning strategies that... Oh, okay. Before that, then we have one question. Gigi.
Good morning. I'd just like to ask Professor Yumane regarding Project G. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the name of the place, but I was quite surprised that that project was how it was done in terms of research. But in the conclusion, the restoration project was not pushed through due to the fact that these monuments are defined as living monuments, in which that the donor would not accept because they are not historical monuments. So I'd just like to ask, if ever, what is the current situation of those living monuments now? Are they being restored locally by the community? And if it is not being restored locally, will they be able to use the research that you guys have done and the restoration policies that we have proposed? Can these be borrowed by the said community in which they themselves can do the restoration themselves, or look for another set of groups to do the restoration for them, sir?
Thank you very much for your question. And do you mean that if the local people cannot restore by themselves, how should they do it?
Yes, for example, if they tend to do the fundraising themselves, is it okay to use your research to fund someone else's labor, or is it better if they have to consult you in the restoration policies that you guys have proposed, since it did not push through?
Yeah. I think that if for the local people, it is somehow very difficult to do the restoration by themselves. So first, I think we need to do the research work by the researchers and experts, and also we should show some models of the restoration in the town and village, as with the one or two examples. And after that, I think people will study the process of the restoration. Then I think they will be able to follow the same process of the restoration.
Thank you, sir.
So, okay. Thank you very much for your question. So for the speakers, listening to all the talks this morning, what would be a short opinion or recommendation as far as planning strategies would be concerned here? Maybe we can start with you, Professor Yu.
Okay, I think most of the discussions this morning point to the fact that it is very important to plan. We have experienced all these disasters, and Professor Melba actually summarized all of it, that we need to have a disaster management plan for all our heritage structures. I was talking about even planning beyond just the historic districts. No, I was talking about the Metro Cebu planning, which we can also incorporate resilience and sustainability. It has to go further than just the historic structure or the historic district, because disaster happens even beyond the confines of these historic structures. The disaster in Fukushima, for example, was a very huge waves, that could go as far inland, as you can imagine. Even the experience in Tacloban was something that is very, very disastrous for all of us. We had 9 to 12 meter waves they experienced there, and what particular heritage structure can survive that? Even if we have a conservation management plan for our structure like that, if we do not look at the overall picture on protecting the entire city from such catastrophes, then it will still all go to naught. Okay, thank you.
Very much, Architect Espina. Father Ted Torralba.
The earthquake of October 2013 was a learning curve for the Diocese of Tagbilaran, for the province of Bohol, in the sense that we used to be rarely visited by typhoon or by earthquake, but with the earthquake of last year, that gave us the opportunity to learn more, especially in regard to a plan, a master restoration plan, even though a number of the churches had conservation management plan. But we need this master restoration plan for the churches and also for the other cultural properties on the island. But aside from that, also a risk management plan, which we do not have as yet. So all of these gave us this rare moment to really learn from the disaster, and as is often been said, we need to build back better.
Yes, thank you very much, Father Toralba. And for those who would like to visit Bohol, it was really the greatest hit now, so you can also go there, learn some lessons, and of course, I'm sure Father Toralba will be available for you. Thank you. Professor Fujioka?
In the last 10 years, sustainability and the community involvement is the central keyword in the heritage preservation in general. And it is the same even after the disaster. And the churches in Bohol and Cebu are deeply rooted in the community and as a place of worship. And the stewardship is in the hands of the community, I think. So, as Professor Melvar said, dialogue and discussion between the heritage experts and governments and the community people are very essential to achieve consensus and to achieve sustainable heritage preservation. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Fujioka. I'm sure we also appreciated your introduction of the International Committee of Blue Shield. Okay, Professor Yamane? Yamane.
Thank you very much again. And I'm not sure that my presentation will contribute to the discussion or not, but today I am very inspired by the professors and all the people's presentation. In India, in our project, there was not a systematic approach for the reconstruction, and that is very important, I think. But I think also that the basic approach is very similar in my project and this Bohol and Cebu reconstruction project. And one thing I want to say is that yesterday I watched the severely damaged churches, and the damage was so severe. And it is very much, of course, very much important to restore and reconstruct the churches. But also, I think another important thing there that local houses, vernacular architecture should be also recovered and reconstructed for the sustainable social system to keep the sustainability. So I think this kind of reconstruction is also very important. Thank you very much for today's presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor Yamane. Senor Carlos Gallego.
Good morning again. As a summary, I could say that all of us, my colleagues and myself, we have been talking about strategies, how to build strategies in order to preserve our cultural common heritage. And I'm impressed because I've seen that lots of things have been done in that sense. But also, I think it is time to go further and start talking about how to manage those strategies. It's important to build the strategies, but it's also very important to see how to manage those strategies in a way or in another. I'll invite you, the ones who have more curiosity, to go also to the websites and have a look to a couple of events in Europe in the last 6 years. very similar to Bohol earthquake. This is Lorca earthquake in Spain and L'Aquila earthquake in Italy. I think both cases are very similar to Bohol earthquake. There are many components in common, and you can appreciate the differences of strategies, not in building the strategies. There are similar technical strategies, but the management of those strategies are slightly different. And you can see the difference in the level of implementation, in the degree of conservation, and so many other differences. I would like you to have a look to this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gallego. Melba, Emma?
Thank you, Joy. This has also been a very rich learning experience for me as an architect. This is the first time in our lifetime that we have experienced an earthquake of this magnitude. So there have been many lessons learned and lessons still to be learned. But to me, while macro strategies are important, I think capacitation of the people themselves is also very important. That's why I would like, again, to stress, please, if the national agencies can already start meeting and designing the curricular and training programs for people in the barangays, the towns and the provinces, so that we can immediately respond to disaster until the experts come. We can do some initial mitigating activities already. That would be a very big help. For me, again, preventive conservation, preventive maintenance can do a lot in saving lives and saving cultural properties. And we can be more effective in doing preventive maintenance if we get trainings. So instead of national government, for example, sending 1 or 2 architects to Italy or Mexico or Spain, why don't we invite the experts to come and train more people together rather than just one at a time? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, speakers. To summarize all of the comments of the 6 speakers, there's one thing that we find that is very common in all, and that is about connecting. Connecting to what? It is about connecting the dots, meaning you connect to the agencies, connect to each other, and you also need to connect with people for this. There's one thing that stands out, I think, among the 6 of them, and it is the community work. When we say community, it's all of us here, whoever you are, whether you're a student, whether you're an agency, whether you're an expert, no, whether you're a craftsman. We need to know who they are, and we need to connect to each other. So heritage conservation then is not something for the experts to do. It is something for everyone to participate in. So thank you very much for this morning session. And this afternoon we will be going more into the talks about actual restoration techniques. So let me give you back to, thank you very much, speakers.
Thank you so much, Ma'am, right? And thank you everyone for being here. And I'd like to remind everyone to, if ever you want to buy snacks ahead for the afternoon session, you could buy ahead because the canteen might be closed a little later in the afternoon. And also, if I may add, like for my fellow students here in CAFA, it's all about collaboration. I think the speakers today are giving us very good lessons on how we should learn to collaborate and foster the expertise of each other. Architecture students not only need to work with architecture students, but we need to link with graphic designers, psychologists, and whatnot. A lot of things could happen when we collaborate with each other. So, and also I'd like to remind the speakers for the afternoon session and the guests to please occupy the first 2 rows if that's all right with you guys. And I think it's our cue to have lunch, and happy luncheon everyone. Good afternoon. And may I remind everyone to please be back here around 1:20 to 1:25 p.m. so you can start on time. Thank you so much. Thank you, speakers.